Welcome to Highly Sensitive, Happily Married, the podcast that teaches you to not only have an easier marriage as a sensitive woman, but to have one that feels more amazing by the day. Where you'll hear relatable stories, love advice that works, and coaching on how to have a marriage where feeling upset and disconnected is a thing of the past, and where instead a sense of loving connection and even fun and lightness is the norm. I'm Hannah Brooks, highly sensitive person, love expert, and marriage coach, and I'm so happy to be on this journey with you. Hello, my friends. Today we are going to talk about a topic that I feel very passionate about, so that may come out here today. We are going to talk about fighting for a fantasy. I see a lot of women making this mistake in their relationships, and I was totally guilty of it too. And sometimes little snippets of it still come up. It's really normal that we make this mistake in our marriages and relationships, because it's just really hard to avoid in our world. And I'll tell you more about that as we get into this. But I really like the point of this episode today is to help you avoid fighting for a fantasy, or help you gently course correct if you are making that mistake now, like so many of us are. Right? And the point of this episode is not to make you feel bad for this at all, right? It's really to give yourself some grace and then reset your course so that you can have a wonderful relationship, right? So we're going to kind of zoom way out to the big picture today to talk about this, really to set you up for the best over the coming weeks. And we're going to kind of zoom in and actually give you some real tools to really make your marriage what you want it to be, to start really going in there and making little changes for the better. So today I want to help you see what you want to be aiming for and what you don't want to be aiming for in your marriage, which of course is fantasy. You don't want to be aiming for something that's not possible, right? You won't make progress in making your marriage more of what you want it to be if your goal is a fantasy, right? It will actually take you further away from the love and connection that you want if your goal is too fantastical, right? So I talk to a lot of women in my daily life who, like you, want their relationship to be better in one way or another, or in many ways, right? And I often hear from these women that they want, their partner to do more of this, or be more this way and less that way, right? To be more attentive, for example, or be more focused on the domestic stuff, like cleaning the house or helping with the kids, or be less obsessed with his phone, right? Or be less focused on work and more focused on them, or be more, what's the word? Like more forthcoming with their words, right? Like talk more, be more communicative, right? They, ultimately what I hear a lot is that their partner isn't really being how he should. He isn't really doing things right? Or at least in a way that makes it easy for them to feel happy and loved and supported. And of course, I get it, right? And my brain knows how to go there too. Like I can go to that place where I'm like, he's not doing it right? Because hey, I'm human too, you're human. And of course that feels very real, right? When we're not feeling supported, when we're not feeling loved, when we're not feeling happy, right? And we see all the ways in which our husband isn't creating that for us, isn't making that happen for us, like isn't even living up to what we thought he would, or doing what we thought he would do in our marriage, right? But this idea of doing it right and doing it how he should is really a fantasy. Right? How we think our partners should be is built on a lie that we've all bought into, which is this. It's like a bigger thing. The lie that healthy marriage is all about feeling supported and loved and happy, right? And really that like our partner is the reason we feel that, right? That our partner is the source of us feeling supported and loved and happy, right? We can't, like, if this sounds kind of funny to you, like, you're like, yeah, well, I don't really think that healthy marriage is all about feeling supported and loved and happy. I don't believe that. Then think again. Check out yourself a little bit deeper. Because I don't think any of us who live in this world, at least in this sort of Western culture that most of us live in these days, are immune to it. I think we all have it. It's kind of like the air we breathe, or the water we swim in. We might not be super aware of it, but if you search inside you, you're going to find little snippets of this, little like the tail of the devil, right? So it seems like a sweet idea, right? That marriage is happy. It's for our feeling great, right? But it's actually not nourishing. It's a toxic idea. It's a toxic belief. It kills love. Because when we believe this, even little like shrapnel of it, we start to notice acutely whenever our partner is doing things that don't lead to us feeling loved, supported, and happy. Right? We start to see all the little wrong things. Right? If we're kind of like spellbound by this fairy tale, by this fantasy, what will happen is that you'll be challenge averse. You'll be thinking something's wrong oftentimes. Right? When you're not feeling happy and he's not doing the things that help you feel happy, when he's, neglecting the dishes in the sink, or he forgot to keep an agreement something that you agreed to, right? You'll be like questioning things, right? You'll be like, oh, it's not supposed to be this way. You'll be resisting how things are. It will lead to adversity, right? When we think that our husband needs to be, better at this, or more focused on you, or more emotionally expressive, for you to feel loved and supported and joyful with him, whenever he isn't doing those things, you'll be upset. You'll think something's wrong. And then what most of us do from that place is, a whole assortment of behaviors. But one of the things we try to do is we kind of try to correct the problem, right? So we might try to get him to do things the way we want him to, right? So let's take the example of, imagine that you want him to take the initiative more often to do things together, like go for little adventures or go on dates or whatever. And he just isn't really oriented around that, right? And that bothers you, of course, because you think you should, right? And what is likely to happen is that you will, particularly, of course, if you're upset about it, right? You will complain to him about how he doesn't do it enough, or kind of tell him he should, or be like, hey, why don't you ever, or be critical of him and be like, hey, what's wrong with you that you never initiate these dates or whatever, right? In other words, you might kind of try to manipulate him into doing this thing, being more, taking more of the initiative so that you can feel how you want to feel. which is like loved and supported, right? So really, when we're like upset about something that he isn't doing, when we think he should be doing it differently than he is, we tend to get into a space, and this might not be true for you, but for many, many, many of us it is, if we're honest with ourselves. I know it was very true for me, and even sometimes I still fall into this place occasionally, where we're kind of nagging, right? Or complaining, or critical, or snappy, or bossy, or controlling, or demanding, right? And for many partners, that doesn't feel so good. Their response is not so good. It doesn't actually inspire them. It doesn't actually inspire him to, want to invite you on a date or plan a date for you, right? It doesn't inspire him towards being more loving and supportive in most cases. It usually does the opposite, right? And so if your partner has been kind of being doing less of those supportive, loving things over time, it's very likely why. This is very likely why. He doesn't feel free to show up and love you naturally as he is and give as he wants to. He feels like he has to or isn't doing it right. If you haven't listened to the episode Revolutionizing Men and Their Feelings and Love with Casey, I think it's episode 7. You should totally go listen. It's really, really relevant here. But I won't go any more into that for the moment. As long as you are subscribing to this idea, that love is really about, or that marriage is really about feeling happy together and supported and loved all the time, then you're going to be in a fight with reality and a fight with your partner. Even if you're not in a verbal fight with him, you'll be in the fight of trying to change them and make them different than they are so that you can feel certain ways. But what will happen is you'll feel the energy of fight. You'll be in that emotion that comes along with fight, which is frustration and striving and anger and discord, right? You'll be feeling that in yourself instead of feeling in the energy of peace and love and joy, right? So you can see even in that, it takes you further away from how you want to be feeling. It takes you further away from love and support into way more challenge and frustration. So how do we deal with this? We've got to unblind our eyes, right? We need to take the blinders off of our eyes, the cultural messaging blinders, and break out of this habit of fantasizing about how marriage should be, how marriage is, what a healthy marriage looks like. So what I'm saying here is if this is going on for you, it's your perceptions that need to shift, not how your partner is doing things. Now, I know that might be getting a reaction. And I am totally not suggesting that you become a doormat, right? Totally not what I'm saying. And this does not mean that he won't change at all. In fact, it's the opposite. This is the first step, one of the first steps to inviting him to change how he does things, right? So that he does show up more with love and support, right? So that your marriage does feel more supportive and loving. And here's the new perception that I want you to adopt that will help you have a better marriage, so much better. Okay, here it is. A healthy, even amazing marriage will be both challenge and support and love. A great partner will be holding your hand or holding you when you're sad or doing the dishes to help out, right? Taking on his own set of tasks around the house. And he will be doing things that completely annoy you. He will sometimes leave the dishes in the sink, right? He will anger you. There will be so many ways that he's not Prince Charming. There will be so many ways that he pushes your buttons. He will push all of your buttons. And that doesn't mean it's a problem. It's actually a good thing that he does. Because it calls on you to become someone who does love better, right? It calls on you to grow and to become the person you most want to be, to develop in all the areas that, like in yourself, that you aren't developed enough to have the great love you want, right? Those challenges, when you embrace them, are actually the path to having even deeper love and support and security than you probably even can envision. But only if you include them in your definition of a healthy marriage. If you embrace challenge as part of a good, healthy, wonderful marriage, right? If you embrace them as an opportunity for you to grow, right? Instead of using the challenges as a reason to point fingers and insist that he change. I get kind of impassioned about this because I had to work with this so much. I was so guilty of this. And it was so painful. It was so hard. It was so painful for me. I created so much pain for myself by subscribing to this kind of thinking, right? That it should be good. It should be comfortable. It should be loving and supportive and happy all the time, right? And I put my husband through so much pain. My ex. I put myself through a divorce in part because of this. So I don't want that for you. I want you to have such rich love in your marriage. The reality of a healthy marriage is that it is not a cakewalk, right? It takes attention and work and commitment and follow through. That's actually truly the nature of making anything wonderful come to life. It's the nature of success in any area, right? Anyone who's ever successful at anything, ask anyone who's successful how hard they had to work at it. They worked at it, right? And it was usually a labor of love. True success comes from that, right? I had to work for the success in my marriage, right? And I still do every day. I embrace that, right? I embrace that it's not easy and that it takes my effort and dedication, right? It's been very intentional on my part, right? I've been very intentional in my marriage because I want it to feel great. And of course, my marriage has been joyful and totally tear-jerking at moments. It's been enraging and totally tender, right? It's been awe-inspiring at moments and hilarious and painful, right? And shameful. I felt shame, right? It's been deliciously passionate. It's been all the things. That is not a fantasy. That is real love. And it's amazing. It's this rich tapestry of experience. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. Because here's the thing. Human psychology and human physiology dictate that love will be hard sometimes, right? It's no one's fault. Each and every one of us has that ancient, primitive, wild creature living inside of us, that fearful creature, right? That I've talked about before. It's in us. It's in our nervous system. It's part of us. It's deeply embedded into us. That alone is going to create some hard stuff because we get triggered, right? And you add to that all the cultural teachings about love and commitment. We all get this. It gets into us. Some of this is in you for sure. There's so many messages that you've picked up from the media and the people around you and your teachers and your parents that really weren't conducive to healthy relationships, right? And we can just look at like the divorce, right? And know that this must be true, right? Because the way we do relationships in this country and in the Western world, it doesn't really work so well, right? And if you think about like the 50% that do stay married, like how many of those people actually have really healthy, good marriages? I don't know, but probably not even 50% of them. Right? We have had so much unskillfulness and so much weird stuff passed down to us through the generations, through the media, just from like Disney that seeps into us and really takes us further away from being able to have healthy relationships. And I'm not going to go into lots of those different things, but we got to just know that that's there, that those teachings are there, right? And add to that like our own individual traumas and wounds from growing up and the way we adapted to them and the stressful lives that most of us live these days. Like not a recipe for like having great relationships, right? So there's that makes it hard. That's one of the reasons, some of the reasons that relationships are hard. And that's the reality that we live with, all of us. We can't change that, right? It's a fantasy to think that we're going to meet the perfect person that has none of that, right? That's not a thing, right? And we can't change the fact that all of that has is in you, right? It is in your partner, right? But you can take the unhealthy cultural teachings out of you. And of course, the trauma can be healed and the stress can be managed, right? And that's important. That's great work to do, right? So last episode, we talked about stress. So if you didn't go listen to that, that's so important. But right now, I do want to talk a little bit more about these cultural teachings and how we can take those out of you and ultimately replace them with new teachings and new perspectives that serve you so much better. This really starts actually just with questioning the teachings, questioning those cultural beliefs that have been passed down to you. And I want to add that this isn't necessarily something you do once and it's done, right? It's not like a once and done. It's going to be something that you probably have to keep an eye out for and do over and over time, right? In different little areas, in different little ways. But it's so worth it because the payoff is huge, right? So I'm going to give you tools over the coming weeks to help you see your own mind and what beliefs are there, what cultural teachings you've absorbed that are keeping you from love, and what else, what other things are in there in that brain of yours that are keeping you from the love that you want. And I'm going to also help you understand the source of your feelings. That's so key. But right now, I want to help you like zap some of the worst of the cultural teachings. And again, replace them with better perspectives that will serve you so much better. And that will help you get so much more of the love and the support and the closeness that you truly want. So here is what I suggest. Start seeing and believing that a healthy, amazing relationship actually breaks down to about 50% good and fun and 50% challenging and hard, right? That the 50% of the time it's normal and natural for things to feel challenging. And 50% of the time it's normal and healthy for things to feel joyful and lovely and close and connected and all the good stuff, right? So that's kind of like the simplest breakdown of it. It's just kind of easy to remember that it's like 50-50, but I want to offer a little bit more on this, which is that more specifically, I like to think about it as like a third of the time we look for our relationships to, or we kind of can expect a healthy relationship to feel really good about a third of the time, right? And then about a third of the time we can kind of expect it to be challenging, to be triggering and be annoying, right? And then a third of the time, it's just going to be neutral, right? And that's normal and healthy and good if that's the kind of the ratio in which you're, the good, the challenging, and the neutral are kind of landing in your relationship. expecting that expecting and allowing for that to be, it actually helps the good times to feel really good, right? In contrast, because we're not expecting them to always be good, so that when they are, it feels sweet, right? It feels lovely. It feels especially good. We know sweetness and like yumminess by its opposite, right? By hard. The contrast is part of life, and it's an important part of life. When we can embrace that hard times our challenge is normal, that those hard times actually aren't as bad because we're not mad that they're happening. We know that they're part of a healthy relationship. So I want to offer a little side note here, which is that if you do find that your relationship feels negative way more than a third of the time or way more than 50%, I want you to know that that does not mean your relationship is doomed. Not at all, right? It just means you might have some more growth, some more focused work, some cultural teachings that you need to get out of the way, right? There's so much room for improvement if you're not experiencing that, 1/3 to 50% of the time it feeling good. Okay. And really, it means that there's this great opportunity for you, right? The challenge opens up an opportunity for you to grow. And that really brings me to the second perspective that I want you to adopt right now. And I've already talked about it already today, but it really bears repeating, which is that the hard times in your relationship are beautiful, potent opportunity for your individual growth and evolution. The heart is the signal to dig and excavate inside of yourself and uncover the treasure that's there, right? Heal the stuff that needs to be healed. When you take that opportunity, instead of being mad that your partner isn't showing up the way you want, when you take the opportunity for your pain to be like the signal for you to look back at yourself and grow yourself, that will get you so much more love, because you become the person who does love so well, right? You become the leader of love. You lead him to love. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go back and listen to, I think it's episode 5 about leading love. So key. You can totally inspire loving change in your marriage by being the leader, by working on yourself first. So important. So powerful. So I want to offer you a personal story about how I am using some of the hard stuff that comes up between me and my husband as an opportunity to grow and evolve in ways I never would have been able to without the hard stuff. And it really relates to this fighting for a fantasy thing that we do, because I still have a little shred of this idea that I forget, and I fall back into the fantasy land the idea that love should be happy and easy, and he should support me, right? I have this idea deep in my unconscious. It's conscious, very conscious now, but that my husband shouldn't be defensive, right? He needs to just listen to me when I say things. He should really hear me and care about what I'm saying deeply, right? And he should not defend. He should just listen, right? Can you see how this is coming from, in part from a good partner, should love me in this certain way so that I feel good and it's all happy and peaceful, right? So this idea that I have, which I know is totally not true, I've questioned it enough, I've looked at it enough to know that it's not true that he shouldn't be defensive. Right? There are reasons that he's defensive at times. There's times when I approach him with a tone that it would be natural for him to get defensive. So as I've been able to see that isn't really helping me to believe that he should always just be able to hear me all the time and he should never be defensive, it's allowed me to take advantage of the opportunity for me to work on me. Right? And it's actually helped me work on really deep core issues that are going on in me. Being heard and feeling cared for. Perhaps you could relate, right? But it's like looking at this has pointed out my own stuff so clearly, right? It's highlighted it so much. And I've been triggered enough by my husband, like by my thoughts about how he should be, that it's allowed me to it's motivated me to finally really heal this part of me, right? Which has totally had like major positive ramifications, of course, in our marriage, but across the board, like in all areas of my life. That really has to do with knowing and trusting that I am heard and that people care about what I'm saying and that I'm worthy of being heard and that I'm loved and lovable and cared for, all that stuff that I'm not going to like illustrate much more than that at the moment, other than to just say it's been profoundly healing for me at a deep level. So this really is the essence of this new perspective that I want you to adopt, which is that your relationship is for growing into who you most want to be. It's the very best arena for healing all your stuff in your life that's keeping you back in various areas of your life. An amazing marriage is not one in which we feel happy, comfortable, loved, and supported all the time. Right? An amazing marriage, an amazing relationship is one in which we heal our own stuff and grow into the very best versions of ourselves possible. Right? Able to love and be loved in all our humanness. So I just want to recap more succinctly these beliefs, these perspectives that will serve you and take your marriage to the next level when you really adopt them, when you really take them in and start seeing life and love through this lens. So here they are. A healthy marriage is 50% support and 50% challenge, right? 50% good, 50% hard. Okay. 2, a relationship is for growing into who you most want to be. 3, it's the best arena for healing all your stuff that's keeping you back in life. When you're really able to adopt these new perspectives, what you'll find is that when your partner doesn't do the things you formally thought he should do, right? He doesn't do things the way you want exactly. It will no longer feel like a threat to the relationship or just a threat to you, right? It won't be so much of a problem, which will release that charge in you, that fight in you that doesn't cause such great stuff between you. And you'll be able to address those things more effectively. Right? You'll actually be able to creatively come up with solutions or talk to him, communicate with him in a way that's actually effective, or decide if you even need to. You might find it's really just not a problem anymore. You don't need to deal with it anymore. You don't need to talk about it or fix it or try to get him to be different and change. Right? And you'll find that you can take these things where when you're triggered by something that he does, when he doesn't do the dishes or whatever, you'll be able to take that as an opportunity, right? As I do now, to evolve yourself, to grow yourself so that you can address your own stuff and move well beyond those things that are keeping you from experiencing the deeper levels of love and understanding and respect and joy and connection that are absolutely available to you right here in this relationship. So I invite you to let these new perspectives really sink in and let them wash away that old fantasy that's only hurting you and your marriage. Let this new perception settle and deepen into you and lead you to the real, deep, lasting love you were born for. And make sure to tune in the coming weeks when I'll be sharing lots of more specific, tangible tools and perspective shifts to help you have that love that you deserve. Until then, be oh so well. Hey, if you've been enjoying these episodes and you're benefiting from them in any way, I'd like to request that you leave a review. Reviews actually help these episodes reach more people and help more people have better marriages. And as we all know, the world could use a lot more love in it these days. So you leaving a review actually helps there be more love in the world, seriously. And I appreciate it deeply if you leave a little review. It's the only way that I can actually hear from you unless you reach out directly to me. And it's always so nice to hear and connect with those of you I'm talking to here. So leave a review in Apple Podcasts or Stitcher or whatever place you are listening to this. If you can, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.